Good evening and welcome to the World of Book Reviews. I'm Judy Mario, your host, and tonight we have a fabulous guest, Gina Gelbach Hall. And Gina has written this incredible book entitled Fire Gal, Rising from the Ashes, and it's really an interesting book. Gina, welcome. It's nice to have you here tonight.
Thank you for having me, Judy.
Gina, tell us a little bit about the book. I mean, I've read it, but I want it in your words.
Well, it's an autobiography of my experience of being one of the first women in our fire department and that evolution of growing up not only in the fire service, but growing up the fire service as well. So it's a story of empowerment for a woman's empowerment in a man's world.
Well, you were, I believe, the first woman captain in the Las Vegas Fire Department. Is that right?
Clark County Fire Department.
Clark County Fire
Clark
Department.
County. Yeah, our first one in our suppression history. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
And you're a tiny little thing, too.
Well, I've gotten bigger over the years.
But when I look at
yeah.
you, though, and I don't, when I see you as a person, I don't think firefighter. You know, because I always think of firefighters as big men. I don't see
That's
it like
typically everybody thinks that. In fact, I would always get looks, especially when I first joined back in 1987. It was such a novelty to have women on the fire, you know, on the fire department, that we go to scenes and be like, oh, there's a girl, you know. So, and then I have a really cute call we went on when I was captain, and I had these 3 big burly engineer and 2 firefighters, and the engineers are the ones that drive the truck. And so we went out to this construction site and we were looking for supposedly a fire, and we meet with this big construction crew, you know, big burly guys. And so we pop out and I'm literally a head shorter than all my crew.
Yes.
And the guy kept talking to one of the guys, and the guy finally says, I'm not the one in charge, she is. He said it was the most embarrassing moment. I had to tell this little girl was in charge.
Oh,
so
that's funny.
So it was humorous at times.
Yeah. Now, when I think of firefighters, I think of people running into fires. I mean, you're a girl, and you were running into fires.
I loved it.
You did?
I loved it. Oh,
did you
I
ever
love
stop to
firefighting.
think this is really dangerous? I could be killed in here.
Well, yeah, I was actually at PepCon, and we've been talking about it a lot. May 4th in 1988, PepCon exploded. It was rocket fuel. And I remember, and I talk about it at the beginning of my book, driving out there thinking, what the heck am I doing? You know, and it was really, that was, I think, the day I really made the decision that, you know, I'm a firefighter, that I go in when every sane person in Henderson was leaving Henderson at the time. And here we were going in. And, you know, there's a real honor and privilege to being a firefighter and to being able to go into people's lives at their worst moments, in their worst possible scenarios that are happening to them, and be able to go in and actually help mitigate that and get them to the resources they need so they can get back on with their lives or take care of the emergency at hand. So it's a very big honor to be a firefighter.
It's amazing, and it's a very honorable profession. You know, to be a first responder and to deal with the situations, and they're so different. Every day is different, right?
That was the best part about it.
Was it?
Yeah, you know, I mean, some calls had similarities to them. But that's what I think I loved about the job the most, was that every day was a new experience. Yes, I went on another car fire, but where it was burning, how it was burning, different mechanics of it, different scenarios of where it was, would totally change the whole scenario. And so over the years, that's why it's so valuable to have firefighters with experiences, because you've seen so many. And I describe it in my book as slides. You put slides into your subconscious, like, okay, well, this slide and this slide. So the more experience you get as a firefighter, the more of these slides that kind of come into focus and help you become better at your craft. And it really is a craft. You know, I mean, we not only did firefighting, which was about 20% of the job, but 80% of it was emergency calls. So going on 911 calls to help people in medical emergencies. So the majority of my job was working with medical patients.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, you had to have all kinds of special training for that.
Oh yeah, I tell you, it's the most trained profession. Somebody asked me, he said, well, why don't you go back and do firefighting? I said, you know, I've been out long enough. It would take me years to get up on par, because every month we did training, in medical training primarily, just because protocols would change. You know, we practiced scenarios like, you know, Route 91. You heard a lot about that recently. those kind of experiences, they have to train for. So now that we've had that experience, I'm sure the fire department is even training harder at it because we learn so many lessons with each experience that we
Right.
have. So we're constantly, like we would be going to the grocery store and we'd be like, okay, there's a building. Now how would we fight a fire there? I mean, it was a constant every day doing scenario-based training, if not physical training as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. We have a lot more women in the fire community now, don't we, than before?
I have not kept on track like I was. When I left, there was about 30 women on the department. I actually heard a gal speaking the other day on Facebook from my old department. She said there's only 15, which is a little distressing. I was hoping they'd have more women,
yeah.
you know, but it's a unique profession in the sense you have to find the women that are interested in doing it and then pursuing it and having the physical ability to take it on.
Right. I wonder if there are many young women that think in terms of it, or if it's still kind of like, no, that's not a job for a woman.
I would think, I would hope now these days that it's more women are open to the experience of it. I think, well, I know from my experience that most of the people that came to the fire service usually had a friend or a relative in it, and that's why you see so many families kind of gravitating in the fire service. And even my son's a firefighter now. And it's not so much that we're like bringing them along, it's that they are very in tune to it.
Right.
Like, you know, I think my dad was in the military, and all my growing up, he was in the military. So to me, going into a paramilitary situation with the fire service was almost a natural progression. He wore a uniform while I was growing up. I wore a uniform while my kids were growing up.
Yes.
So I think it's just a matter of women aren't exposed to it as a career as much as they probably need to or would think that there's opportunities out there. Although there are a few groups, so if women are interested, all they have to do is reach out and there are resources available.
Excuse me a second, we're going to have to take a break. We're going to be right back.
Thank you for calling Denim Revival.
Hate to say goodbye to your favorite jeans? Well, now you don't have to, because Denim Revival is here for you. Mail us your jeans and our professionals will fix it right up. We offer you all kinds of alteration services, including invisible repairs, let-outs, taperings, and original hemming, or even have your own custom-made jeans. Quoted the best denim repair shop by GQ, Vogue Magazine, and LA Times. Denim Revival, your search for alteration and repair ends here.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us this evening. My guest tonight is Gina Gelbeck Hall, and Gina wrote this wonderful book, Fire Gal, Rising from the Ashes. It's a woman's story of empowerment in a man's world, and it was a man's world, wasn't it?
Oh, it definitely was. It was a boys' club. Yeah, they weren't too happy when women were joining it. So
I was going to ask you
it was
that.
an evolution.
You know, I was the first female executive in a media group of 9,000 people in Africa, in South Africa, when I lived there, and they didn't want me. They really didn't. And I was going to ask you, did you find that kind of feeling that people almost treated you like, we don't want you here?
Oh yeah, no, they were very vocal about it. And I wouldn't say all the men, because that would be a terrible misrepresentation. But that 10% that was really vocal could make my life 90% miserable. So yes, there were a portion, and I would say 10%, that no matter my whole career there, they didn't want me there. And then there was about 20% that were, or 10% that were really actively engaging and wanting women in and were very supportive. And then there was 80% that didn't care one way or the other. So,
as long as you could
yeah,
do
they're kind
the
of
job.
the silent majority. You know, I was like, whatever.
Just
But,
do your job
yeah.
and stay out of my way.
Yes,
right?
but that 10% could make your life miserable. Yes.
Boy, they did me. They really made an effort. In fact, I'll never forget, I was in my first big board meeting and I said, where's the ladies' room? And one of the gentlemen said, oh, you have to go down to the next floor. We didn't think any of you would ever make it up this high, so there's no women's room here. I was like, whoa. Okay.
Oh yeah, well we had the same thing. Well, we put a slide lock on the bathroom, so if you need to take a shower, you can actually have a little
Oh,
privacy.
you could actually lock
Oh
the
yeah,
door.
I would 2 in the morning. You know, you have to go to the bathroom before you go on a call. And I'd have to walk the wall right around the urinals. You know, like okay, I'm not watching you guys at the urinals. You know, and I used to laugh that I knew every style of men's underwear out there.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
So what was maybe your scariest experience? Did you tell us about that in the book?
Well, you know, people ask me that. I think one is more humorous, but it could have been scary, a couple of them. But one was we were going on a call, person down, and I was walking in, and I used to be working kind of a bad part of town. So I had this 4 D-cell battery flashlight that I carried, like almost a baton. And I walked up, and I was leading my crew in, and I walk in, and there was this guy, and he was at least 6'4", had to be a linebacker of some professional team. I mean, huge, like he filled up the whole like walkway, you know,
Yes,
the
yes.
hallway as we were going in. And I was holding my flashlight, and he wasn't looking very nice. He was like, you know, looking like he was ready to beat right through me. And he looks down at me, and he goes, "You gonna use that on me?" And I looked up to him, I mean, literally, I looked up to him and I said, "Am I gonna have to?"
That's funny.
And the absurdity of it to both of us, like I could even hurt this guy. I don't care how many D cells I had in there, it wasn't gonna hurt this guy. And he just started laughing, and he cleared the way, but it was one of those like, oh, this could go totally wrong.
could,
You know,
it could.
and had a few patients, you know, high on drugs that, you know, I had to wrestle, and I'm not typically a wrestler, you know, as my partner's trying to call Metro, and got holed down in an apartment complex in an inner area while a gang turf war was going on. So, yeah, there was a few times. I would say more of the medical calls than the fire
Yeah,
calls.
really?
Yeah, the fire calls we do so much training for, and have so many redundancies in safety procedures that really it's atypical to be in a situation where you really don't have an exit plan, you can't get out safely. I mean, I've had a few close calls where a fire could have gone really bad, and you know, it's like, thank you, you know, that nothing happened, you know, but it was almost in retrospect. I mean, I've had a few that way, but at the time, we all managed to get out and be safe with it.
Now, the whole time you were a firefighter, were you here in Clark County?
I was.
You were, yeah.
Mhm, my whole
And then
career.
you became a battalion chief.
I did in
Now,
2004.
What does that mean?
A battalion chief supervises the fire stations, and a fire station can be anywhere from 4 to 20 people. And I supervised 10 fire stations, 2 in Laughlin. I was in that battalion that had Laughlin stations, and 65 personnel.
My goodness, that's a lot.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
That was a lot. You know, and I handled all the training, you know, making sure they got to training, all the scheduling issues, you know, any disciplinary issues, you know, the day-to-day running. And then if we had a bigger call, I would go in and take command, or I would be actively training or working with my captains to make sure they had what they needed to be prepared. So it was a big
Amazing.
job, yeah.
Amazing. What made you write the book?
Well, I ended up having to sue the department for sexual discrimination in 1996. And it took 12 years to go through the whole legal process. And to put it in perspective, my son was starting kindergarten when I filed, and he was graduating from high school when we settled.
My goodness.
So, yeah, when you put it in perspective, like, my kids never knew me without this going on. I wrote the book mainly because it was such a lonely experience, and I wanted other women and other people going through experiences, and not just lawsuits, but in general stressful things at work, to know they're not alone, that there are some strategies and tactics. So I shared my personal growth and what I had to do to not only overcome the legal process, but overcome the emotional process that it put me through.
Yeah.
So this is more of my emotional journey through becoming a firefighter and figuring out what I thought it was going to be and what it turned out were two different things, all the way to not only filing a lawsuit, but promoting to captain and battalion chief while I had an active lawsuit. Now that's a
Now that's another
Yeah,
story.
that's a whole nother
We're going to
story.
talk about that on the next section. We have
Okay.
to take a break now.
Okay.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back very shortly with Gina Gelbeck Hall.
Snap-on dentures will change your life. And at Smiles Today Dental, we now offer the lowest price in town. Mini dental implants can stabilize your loose dentures permanently. Call Smiles Today Dental for a free consultation.
Welcome back. I'm Judy Morio, and this is the World of Book Reviews, and we're talking about this wonderful book, Fire Gal, Rising from the Ashes. And we're just talking with the author, Gina Gelbeck Hall, about the emotional experience of writing the book while going through a lawsuit and at the same time conducting her job and being promoted. Amazing experience.
Amazing. And it took I found out, and we don't have time to go through the whole story, so I suggest everybody read the book for the whole story. But I found in this whole process that the biggest thing I had to change and to overcome wasn't necessarily them, what was me. It was me changing my perspective, looking inward and kind of going to a higher level of perspective of what I needed to do to be successful there. And it was getting to that higher perspective and being able to kind of deal with it in a more organic way that was more self-serving to myself and the organization, the other people, was really where my success fell. And also making my personal health a priority. That was a big thing, and I was really blessed that I got injured, of all things, hurt my shoulder, and ended up being off for 5 months. And during that 5 months, I met a gal that ended up being probably the person that changed my life and opened me up to doing a lot of coaching and seminar work that got me really into looking at how my emotions were creating my environment and how to kind of set healthy boundaries, how to not be in reaction. Like, she used to have a really good analogy. She said, most people, I don't want to hit my mic, most people will process their emotions right in front of their heart. So when it comes in, it's like it hits you and you're reacting right there. So part of the process I had to do was to pull that out and kind of let the emotion come in, look at the soup it was, and say, is there something I need to do? Is this something about them? Can I let it back out, or is it about me? And if it is, what can I effectively do to change that? So my process was really, and it was much more than this, but it was pulling that out and having an ability to look at things before I processed them right away. And that's definitely a skill, and you have to learn and work on it. And I'm still a work in progress.
You're fortunate that you met someone who could teach that to you, especially at that time, because it must have been incredibly emotional.
I was a mess.
You were a mess.
I was a mess. I was a mess. And I was doing things that weren't really helping me emotionally, physically, or even in my career. And so I think those changes that I started making not only set me up to have a better personal life, but they also set me up to be more effective as my career went on. And I don't think without that work I would have been as effective as a battalion chief.
Well, I found the book absolutely fascinating. When I was reading it, I was like amazed at everything that you went through, and that you came out to be this wonderful person that I had met through someone else that I know and respect and admire. And then I watched you as you have just grown over the last few years. It's amazing with your writing and your art. You're also quite the artist as well. And so I'm loving this book, and I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen out there, you're going to love this book too. You can get this in just about any bookstore as well as on Amazon, and I'm going to have Gina give you her website a little bit later. But it is called Fire Gal, Rising from the Ashes, and it's written by Gina Gelbeck Hall, who is our guest tonight. And we are going to take another short break right here, and we'll be back with you in just a moment.
Love is the essence of beauty. And at Vegas Beauty Skin Center, we love what we do. Fall in love with your skin again. From our laser services to eyebrow threading and facials, everything we do at Vegas Beauty Skin Center is about helping you look your best. Come to Vegas Beauty Skin Center, where every client is number one. Call 702-722-6464. LVAC members receive 20% off all services.
Welcome back. I'm Judy Mario, and this is the World of Book Reviews. And we're talking with Gina Gelbach Hall about her book, Fire Gal, Rising from the Ashes. And Gina, tell me a little bit about the process of being an author. Did you have an outline where did you know what you wanted to do in the beginning, or what?
Well, I had actually been asked to speak at a conference and about my experience, and the outline I had for my speech was actually the chapters that originally started as a book. So I actually said, you know, I have a lot more to say than what I said in the lecture, and it was expanding actually my bullet points, and it became the chapters. So that's how it started, as its framework.
Yeah. And then did you sit down every morning and write so many pages?
Gosh, no. I really feel it was divinely inspired. I you know, when people talk about muses, I think there's a muse out there. And I would sit down and sometimes write a chapter in an hour and a half. And then I wouldn't write on it for maybe a month and a half. And then I'd sit down and write 1 or 2 chapters, and then maybe a week would go by. It was never, and if I tried to force it, it wouldn't work. But I remember I would finish a chapter, and I would type it on the computer, and I'd get done and hit save, and I'd go, well, that probably sucked, you know. And then I'd go back and read it going, I wrote that? That made more sense than I thought. And what was interesting, though, for me is every time I wrote a chapter, almost within 24 hours, I had this like universal kind of thing come over that it's like they wanted to see if I really believed what I said. Like I would have a situation come up and I would actually have to react, like I said, or suggested in the book. And it was kind of like a validation for me, because it was like, wow, you know, I really do believe that. I really do, you know, feel that way. So it was a very interesting process to do. And I think sometimes I couldn't write a chapter maybe because I needed an experience. I needed that previous experience or something. So it was very inorganic. I mean, it was, you know, like I know people sometimes sit down and have this really ritual about it. Mine was totally unritual. There was no ritual to it.
So you can't say you had writer's block because it wasn't...
No. You know, well, it's easy when it's your own story because you know all the information.
Right.
It's not like, you know, I had to go and research some of it or anything like that. But I will say that I was not a writer when I started this. And my first editor, she was brilliant in the sense that she actually taught me how to write. And she got this book, and I'm sure she was going, oh this is bad. And she actually taught me how to make the storytelling part of the book. And it was working with her, and I don't think she ever anticipated she'd be working so hard with me, but she really taught me how to write it in a story form, and really worked with me on that. And that really helped bring the story from kind of one-dimensional to three-dimensional, and kind of really illustrate it in from the eyes of a reader versus the eyes of the author. So that really helped.
So many times I think when we're writing our story, we don't think about the person who's reading it as much, and we really need to do that.
Yeah.
That took me a while to get that as well, because I would be so involved in telling my story my way, but did that make sense?
Yeah.
Did that let the person have the insight into the situation, or were they just getting my slanted view?
Yeah, and you have to get really vulnerable to write, especially an autobiography. I remember a girlfriend of mine and I had a lot of great friends that would pick up a chapter and read it for me, or give me some really honest, and I'll tell you, if you ever write a book, you better have you better have be in a zen moment, because you will get honest feedback. And she said, you know, Gina, every time you get to a place that's kind of, I can tell you're kind of going into an uncomfortable part of a story, you get like this third person, like you go into what she called coaching hat. You put on your coaching hat, and it's like a coaching session versus what you really felt. And she goes, I'm really digging the story, and then all of a sudden you kind of disappear from the story. You get really clinical. And that was a great insight, because when I started seeing it through that, and I hadn't seen it through that lens, but when I started looking at the stories, she was right. And whew, you know, you go, oh, you know, I have to write this down and I have to be real, but I can't just be clinical about it. I mean, I have to be real. I have to talk about how I screwed up as well, you know, or how I created some of this, and, you know, how those real heartfelt conversations in there. And that's a challenge, you know, and it's a vulnerability.
Well, you did a good job of it, because, you know, when I read it, it was very real. I felt your emotion that you wrote it. So that was very good advice that she gave you.
Well, and another thing is, I could have written a very angry book. I could have, you know, I mean, I left the department with some PTSD, and, you know, I still kind of deal with some of the aftermath of that. And yet, that wasn't the story. You know, the story wasn't, they were being authentic how they were. And it was how I needed to react to be authentic for me. And so it served me no purpose to be angry at those people, because actually I look back now and they gave me some of my greatest gifts. And those people that were that 10% that were horrible really were some of my most fabulous teachers. And to get to that point, and I'm still getting to that point, I couldn't write a book that still sold my department down the road, because that wasn't helpful. It wasn't going to do anybody any good.
No.
And they were learning just as well as I was learning.
Well, we're all learning, aren't we?
We are.
Life is not easy. I don't know where we get the idea that when we grew up and life was just going to be okay and easy. Seems to get tougher and tougher all the time. You know, that's...
Well, I used to tell them as a battalion chief, you know, nobody said you had to enjoy your job. You just had to show up and do your job.
That's true, isn't it? Yeah. But it's better if you can enjoy it.
Yes, I think so too.
It's really better if you can enjoy it. It was interesting to me, I was working with another firefighter recently on some coaching things, and he talked about his family, meaning his wife and his children. They were a firefighting family. His children were just little children. And then when I heard you say it a little while ago, you know, that very often families are involved, it struck me that he was basically getting his family involved from a very early age. So they do kind of grow up with it.
They do, and it's a very unique profession. It's a lot of fun, you know, and I think, you know, you hear a lot of stories. I mean, you know, people like you at your party because, you know, you tell a story. You know? Yeah, it's definitely a way of life. Like, I remember when I retired, my son told me, you know, the one that's a firefighter, before he was a firefighter, he said, well, Mom, you keep telling me you're a firefighter. You're not a firefighter anymore. And I had to do one of these, like, double takes. And I thought, no, I'll always be a firefighter.
Yeah.
I said, it's in my DNA. You know, I mean, even if I'm 90 years old, I'm still a firefighter. And then I'm also a lot of other things.
Right.
But it's not like I left that part of my life. It's just I've grown it in different ways now.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Will you please tell our audience how to get a copy of your book?
I'd be glad to. Yeah, you can get Fire Gal Rising from the Ashes. The best way is on Amazon. I have it both in book form and Kindle. You can also get it through my website, firegalwisdom.com. And I really appreciate you having me here today, Judy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us this evening. And thank you to my producer-director, Amy Kardashian. And just want you to know that these wonderful programs that Amy produces are all archived on akexperttv.com. So you can go there at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and view not only my show, but also Amy's show and Stephanie Thompson's show. So go to akexperttv.com to see more of these exciting shows, and have a wonderful evening.